Hello everyone. In this lesson, we will learn about custom fields. You might be wondering, what is a custom field? Well, let's dive right into an example so we can answer that question organically. So in a previous lesson, we wrote code on the home page here to pull in two events, right? These are using our custom post type named event. And the title and the text and the permalink is real dynamic WordPress data, but this date is still fake hard-coded static HTML. Now you might remember that when we set up this section, the most recent blog posts, these dates are indeed real dynamic data. These are the dates that each post was created on. But if you stop and think about it, when it comes to upcoming events, no one cares what date the event post was created on. People want to know what date the event is actually going to take place on. Let's use this Poetry Day event as an example. So if I go into the WordPress admin to edit that post, if we look over here in the right-hand sidebar, what I'm trying to say is that no one cares what date the post was published on. That date is irrelevant to the general public. Instead, what we need is a new field entirely where we can select the date that the event will take place on. So for example, we have a field for the title, we have a field for the content, we have a field for the excerpt. Wouldn't it be nice if there was another field down here where we can select an event date? Well, that's exactly what custom fields enable us to do. So right now, why don't we go tell our event post type that it should support custom fields? So in your text editor, go ahead and open up the Must Use Plugins folder. Remember, this is the file where we describe our custom post type of event. And then remember this parameter named supports. This is where we added on the excerpt feature. Well, right after excerpt, why don't we just add a comma and then say custom-fields. Okay, now as soon as you save that file and jump back into the admin edit screen for one of your events, now let me show you how we can view custom fields. Up in the very top right corner, we see this icon that's 3 dots. If we click on that, then at the very bottom of this menu, we see options. So let's click on options. And then at the very bottom of this pop-up menu, we see advanced panels, and we can check this checkbox next to custom fields. So let's do that. It's going to say that you need to enable and reload, so go ahead and click enable and reload. Okay, and now down below our title and body content, we see custom fields. We have two inputs, name and value. So for example, we could say something like name is event date, and then for the value, we could just give it a date, right? July 1st, 2017. And you could add another custom field. So then that gives us another empty pair of name and value. So you could say mood equals happy. And you could add another field and say name equals event type and the value equals speech. You get the idea. But stop the train. Stop. This is a terrible, terrible user experience for about 50 different reasons. Right? Can we honestly expect the authors and editors of our website to have to type in the field name itself? The authors of our website should just get to choose a date. They shouldn't have to memorize the secret field names of event-date or whatever other fields we have, right? Because out of sight, out of mind. So when someone creates or edits an event, all they're going to see is just two empty fields. And this is not intuitive in the slightest. You would almost have to give the authors of your website a cheat sheet that they could print out and keep on their desk with the exact field names that they need to use, and that wouldn't be fun for anyone. So how can we solve this problem? Well, you and I could try to write code to improve the custom field user experience, right? We could try to customize the WordPress admin, but we could also try to reinvent the wheel. It's probably not a good idea. It wouldn't be a very efficient use of our time because other super talented people have already spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours creating the perfect custom field solutions. And they've shared those solutions as plugins. There are two main plugins when it comes to custom fields. I would say two industry standard plugins. Number one is Advanced Custom Fields, and number two is CMB2, which stands for Custom Meta Boxes 2. Now, if you know me, you know that I normally do not like plugins at all. I always try to use as few of plugins as possible on a site. And yet, I still use one of these two plugins on almost every website I build. They're just that good. Now, you don't need both. You can just use one or the other. In this course, you and I are going to be using Advanced Custom Fields. I wouldn't say that it's, quote, better than CMB2, but I would say that it's a bit easier to use and get started with. Now, before we go ahead and install the new plugin, I first want to go back into our must-use plugins folder, and on this supports line, we do not need custom fields here. Instead, the plugin is going to take care of everything on its own. So go ahead and delete custom fields from that line and then save again. And now let's go ahead and install a new plugin. So in the WordPress admin, let's go ahead and click on plugins in the sidebar. And then click add new, either up here or in the sidebar. Okay, let's use this top right field to search for Advanced Custom Fields. Here it is. You'll know you're looking at the right plugin if it has over 1 million active installs. Also, the author of this plugin is named Elliot. Okay, so once you find that specific plugin, let's click Install Now. But once it installs, then let's be sure to activate the plugin. And now, with it activated, you'll see a new option down here towards the bottom of the sidebar named Custom Fields. So go ahead and click on that. And in this plugin, everything revolves around field groups. You can see that at the moment we don't have any field groups, so our first step is to create one. So add new. Okay, what do we want to name this first field group? Why don't we just call it event date? Okay, and even though we call it a field group, it doesn't need to contain multiple fields. So in this case, we just want to create one single field named event date. So to do that, let's use this button here that says add field. This first field is the human readable or human friendly label. That basically just means that you're allowed to have spaces in the name. And then this second field is sort of the computer friendly variable name. It'll automatically convert your human friendly name into a variable name with an underscore instead of a space, but you're free to customize this if you want. Okay? The next option is what type of field we want to create. So we could just create a simple plain text field where users type in the date, but instead if we choose date picker down here, it'll create a much more intuitive experience for our authors. And we will see that in just a moment when we take it for a test drive. Okay, we don't need any field instructions. Should this field be required? It's up to you, but I'm going to say yes. An event should indeed require an event date. Okay, next we can leave display format with the default selection. However, for the return format of the date, I need you to select this YMD option here. This way it will play nicely with the PHP we're going to write in just a bit. Okay, all of these other options for now look okay. We can continue to scroll down. As you scroll down a bit further, you will see a box named location. And this is very important. This controls when and where the authors of our website will see this field group. So for example, show this field group only if the current post type of whatever you're editing is equal to, and then we could change this from post to event. So that way this field will not show up on generic posts and pages, it will only show up for our custom post type. Now that's all we need to set at the moment, so let's scroll back up to the top and click Publish here. Cool, so we successfully created our first field group, and now let's go try to edit an event again. So in the sidebar, click on Events. I'm going to try to edit Poetry Day. And underneath the main content field, we see this brand new event date field. And as soon as I click on that field, a little mini calendar pops up, and now I'm free to choose whatever date I want. So maybe I will choose July 20th. You can choose whatever date you want, but let's go ahead and save that. And now the next logical step is to find out how can we use that custom field data on the front end of our website, right? How can we use that here instead of the fake hard-coded date? Well, let's jump into our text editor right now and I will show you. So for now, we can forget about our must-use plugins folder. Instead, I want you to go into your theme folder and jump into the frontpage.php file. So if we scroll down just a little bit, here we see the custom query. Here is the while loop. And within this link, that's where we see the spans, one with the month and one with the day. Let's begin with the month first. So let's delete the static hard-coded MAR, and instead let's drop into PHP. And you know how normally we have access to functions like the title or the permalink? Well, in this case, that new plugin gives us access to a new function named the field. Okay, and then within the parentheses for that function, we just tell it which field in particular we are looking for. Now, if you forgot the name of the field, you can always just go into your WordPress admin and down here towards the bottom, click on Custom Fields, select the field group. This particular field group only has one field, but you can see this column named field name is what we're looking for. So it's all lowercase and it uses an underscore instead of a space. So back in our code, when we call this function the field, for the argument, let's say event underscore date. Now if I save that and go check out the front end of my website, if I select or highlight it, we can read the entire thing. It begins with the year and then the month and then the day. But in this context, we don't want the full date, right? Within that span, we just want the month, and then within this span, we only want the 2-digit day. So the question right now is, how can we convert this string of the entire date, year, month, and day, how can we convert that into just a 3-letter representation of a month, like we see over here, like June or May? Well, let's go on a bit of a PHP journey. So just for a moment, let's forget about this the field function. Let's actually delete that. Okay, so we've got an empty PHP canvas here again. And inside the PHP tags, I'm actually going to drop down to a new line, just so it's easier to see what's going on. And let's begin by creating a new variable. We could name it whatever we want. Let's call it event date. And let's set it to equal a new instance of a class that is part of PHP and not WordPress in particular, named date time. Okay, so now we've got this new variable, or I should say this new object named event date, and it's using this class as a blueprint. So now check this out. On a new line, we can look inside that object, so event date, and then a dash greater than symbol to look inside the object. And it contains a method or function named format. And this is our chance to say if we want the month or the day or the year, right? So remember, the code for the 3-letter abbreviation of a month is uppercase M. So at the beginning of this line, if we echo it out, let's save that, and we see June. And that's because at this moment that I'm recording this lesson, that's the current month of today. So back to the code. This class in PHP named dateTime, if we don't give it anything within its parentheses, it will default to the current date. So this line of code creates an object that is a representation of the current date. But instead, if in these parentheses we provide an argument of a date in the future or in the past, well, then that's what our object will represent. So I think you can guess what we want to do. We want to use our custom field within these parentheses. So remember, we had access to that new function named the field. And then within those parentheses, the name of our custom field is event_date. But before we save this code, I want to point something out. The function named the field is going to handle the echoing and outputting onto the page for us. In this case, we just want to return this value. So instead of the field, we can run a function named getField. Okay, so this will return that string of text that is the year, 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 month, month, day, day. And we're creating an object that represents that date. And then on this line, we're saying, hey, look inside that object and format things so we just return the 3-letter representation of the month. And then we're echoing that out onto the page. So let's save that. Cool, and now instead of June, we see July. Because remember, I set my event date to July 20th. So next, let's just do the same thing for the day. So back in our code, we can just copy and paste this echo line here. So let's select that, copy it into our clipboard. And then within this span, where we just want the 2-digit representation of the day, let's delete the hard-coded 25 and then paste in your clipboard. Now remember, what we just pasted in is PHP. So right before what we just pasted in, we want to be sure to open up a PHP tag. And then right after what we pasted in, let's add a closing PHP tag. So question mark, greater than symbol. All right, and this time for the format, instead of an uppercase M, which gives us the 3 letters for a month, let's use a lowercase d for day. So let's save that. Perfect, July 20th, which is the date that I set for Poetry Day. You'll notice though that for the Science of Cats, it says June 27th. And as I'm recording this, that's the current date. And that's because we didn't retroactively go into the Science of Cats post and set the event date. Remember that by default, this PHP datetime class will return the current day if you don't give it anything within the parentheses. Now luckily, when we created that custom field, we said that it was required. Remember, back in the admin, if you click on custom fields in the sidebar and then click on your event group, and this field group only has one field, but if you click on it right here, it will drop down, and you'll remember that we set the required attribute to yes. So in the future, whenever I create a new event post, it will force me to select a date so that this doesn't happen. But it's not going to retroactively go back in time and yell at me to enter dates. So if you want to be thorough, you could go back through right now and set event dates for all of your event posts. So we've already set one for Poetry Day. Let's go into the Science of Cats. Here's the event date field. I will set it to June 30th. Let's click Update. And let's go back to my list of events, and I will edit the Math Meetup event. And let me set the event date to June 29th. Save that. Cool, so now if we go back and refresh, we see that the Science of Cats gets the proper date, June 30th. Now at this point, let's change gears and talk about what we're going to work on in our next lesson. Let me ask you a question. So we are pulling in 2 posts here, but my question is, how are we deciding which 2 to pull in? Right? When it comes to our blog, it makes sense to pull in the 2 most recently created or recently published posts. But when it comes to upcoming events, it makes more sense to load in the 2 most rapidly approaching events, right? Based on their event date. So in our next lesson, we are going to learn how to take our custom query skills to another level. Let's keep things rolling, and I will see you in the next lesson.